Okay, we're on.
Yep.
So today, as I saw in the agenda, Kilton will give us a demonstration of the IO and what we discussed, because there's a short, I think we need to do it today if you want to hit it for the KubeCon EU, right? To send the proposal about
they gave out conflicting instructions, so I'm not sure, but to be safe, we should get it in by midnight Pacific time today. Another email came out that implied it might be next week, but I would get it in today just to be safe.
Sure. So yeah, I think that could be a first item on the agenda to see how to represent the group the upcoming KubeCons this year. So, Steve, do you want to lead that, because you shared some information? Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar or new to Kubernetes, the way they run the community is that each working group and special interest group is allowed to propose an intro and a deep dive session. There's no guarantee they take them, but I don't know. In my experience, is as long as you follow the guidelines for what you propose, I think they do take them. KubeCon Barcelona is coming up in May, and the deadline to put the proposal in for these sessions is today, midnight Pacific time. The sessions are, if you do an intro and a deep dive, they're each 35 minutes. This is a new policy, but as of this meeting, they want original new content that's never been presented anywhere else. So formerly, when they did these KubeCons across regions, they actually were happy to take one. You could present in Europe and then do the exact same session again in Shanghai, but they've now announced that since people can watch the recording and they record all of them, they don't want that to happen anymore. So as a group, if we've got something worthwhile to present, talk about, or even have a birds of a feather, we can get that proposed. I don't know about Deon's attitude, but some of us, I see Preston on the call too, and I didn't look if Cindy is here, but we sort of organized some panels at the Seattle event, but we'd like to mix it up and give an opportunity for other participants rather than leadership to present. We're not looking for sales pitches for anybody new here, so the kind of content we're looking for is kind of, open source, things that are reusable across the whole community. It's okay to even talk about Kubernetes in the context of futures, like, gee, it would be, there are these issues with applying it for IoT use cases or at edge, and it'd be great if items 1, 2, or 3 could be addressed. So that's a perfectly valid talk too. So with that said, I guess we can throw it out for open discussion as to whether anybody's got specifics to propose. And if you look at that meeting document that I posted a link to in the chat, we did cover a little bit of subject matter last week or at the last meeting for the group going forward in the year. And that's kind of a potential topics to bring up as sessions. And just, if you can't make Barcelona, the deadline for KubeCon Shanghai, which it will be in June, a month after the Europe event, I think we've only got about 3 weeks to get a proposal in for that too. So it's coming up very soon. And if anybody on this call wants to participate, you'd be expected to be physically present there. So that might, I know I'm going to be, my employer has told me that I'm to book flights, so I'm very likely to be physically present. But that doesn't, I'd be happy to turn over the keys to that to somebody else who's got, who wants to take over one of those slots. So anybody else want to comment?
So Stephen, what do we need for a submission?
There's an abstract that's, when I've done them, they're usually, call it 3 paragraphs. It's limited to 900 words, and you need speaker bios. You also have to, any proposed speaker has to be registered in the Linux Foundation system, which entails getting an email and a bio that doesn't automatically get copied over to the session bio. That's about it. It's fairly informal. In addition to the abstract, you can put what's called a detailed description that's only used by the reviewers. And that has the limit on words there is probably double the size. I don't remember the exact limit, but you can put more words there. The actual abstract will be what's exposed to the public when the session is listed. Just other hints, since I've proposed a number of times too, you don't want to like rush an abstract with typos in it and spelling errors, because many of the reviewers will just automatically reject it. It pays to, not rush it and compose one in the last 20 minutes before the deadline, because in order to get in, you want something that is going to get a favorable review from the panel that reviews these things. There are other things too, by the way. There are diversity guidelines. So as soon as you get a panel over 2 people, you're required to have underrepresented classes on the panel.
Let's go ahead and figure out who wants to follow up on that, and maybe move on to other matters, I guess. I don't know. Is there anyone who's willing to? I think somebody needs to basically be a point person if they're going to do that. And I don't know if Harald, you were interested enough to kind of raise your hand.
But that means that we have to have this abstract and everything by tonight, right?
Yeah.
And we could continue this conversation on Slack or the mailing list. So I don't think, let's just get a show of hands maybe of people who think they might be prepared. First of all, if you're not even going to be there, obviously you're not a candidate for this, right? And if you've got suggested topics, maybe just list them in the agenda doc for the meeting. And those who raise their hands, we can maybe have a conversation on Slack later today to carry on with this.
Do you guys think it makes sense to maybe propose a similar panel like we had in Seattle? So it's basically shouldn't be the same session, because we can change the...
Yeah, I think, for example, in Seattle for the deep dive, we had a presentation on Kubernetes Edge, and we can't, I don't think it's fair to go there because that's already been presented. But if we had something else, yeah, that would be a good idea. And
I did submit a topic around Kubernetes. Mainly is like we have real customer usage currently. So the idea is to share like concrete learnings there.
Right.
So,
and if you already submitted outside this SIG, then there's probably no point in doing another one in this.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Is the deadline for outside the SIG the same?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Somehow I missed that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on because we've got somebody there. But if somebody is going to be there and wants to participate, why don't you leave your name down?
Maybe because, especially for the Euro people, like it's getting close to the end of the day, so it's thin chance that we will manage to do it, something like that. But if anybody has an idea, as Steve said, like let's put them in the agenda doc, and maybe if the deadline is extended, we can work on that next week. Steve, you're muted. I see you're trying to speak.
Okay, since I'm in the Pacific time zone, if you want to give me some help of something that you'd like to have covered, I can compose an abstract and then run it by and.
Okay, let's move on. So the other administrative topic I have for today is the new meeting times. So I sent something on the mailing list how it should work based on the what we have in the votes and the requests we're having from the people in the Asia time zones. So it's just a proposal, so it's open for discussion. It's, you know, we can try it for a while, see you know, how much responses do we have in each of the time slots, and then, you know, adapt to everything. But, you know, maybe if it's okay with everybody, maybe from the next in 2 weeks we can start doing the new time. Anybody have any thoughts about it?
I think we can go ahead and try it. It's gonna be Wednesday, 9 o'clock here, Pacific time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is that this slot is basically moved to Wednesday and moved 1 hour later, and then we have the alternate slot, which is like a 12 hours. You know, subtracting, you know, changing AM with PM, and we can alternate every 2 weeks between the two times. So I know it's not ideal for everybody. You know, the 6 AM slot, I'm not sure I'd be regular on that one, but the meeting should be recorded, and we should plan for the you know, interesting topics for the people participating in actual groups. But, you know, let's maybe give it a try and see how it goes. Okay, if there's no objections, then I'll change the calendars and we can try it out.
Okay.
Are you going to send a kind of standard format calendar invite to the group email that we should be able to just?
Yeah. I think we have our own calendar for the group.
I think actually the Kubernetes organization has a template that, and when you change it, you're supposed to go change your groups inside GitHub.
Yeah, so there's 2 things as far as I remember from creating the working group. So we have our official calendar. I'll try to find it out and share the link, so that one will be updated. And then as Steve said, in the GitHub, in the description of the working group, we should change it as well. Yeah.
And Dion, I've done those changes before, so if you want to delegate it to me, just let me know what it's supposed to say, and when I get back home later today, I can go submit the PRs.
Sure.
Yeah, right now our meeting time link on the GitHub page goes to a part in our Dust kind of some sort of Google Docs Kubernetes based sort of 404 page. I don't know what it is, but
I remember.
Anyway, my plane is boarding, so I'm out of here. But see you guys at the next meeting. Bye.
Okay.
No worries.
Bye.
Okay, so I think now it's time to hand over to Kilton for the
maybe just one more point, just in case. I don't think I see anyone, but if there's anyone new, maybe just do quick intros to the group if this is your first time, and then we'll dive into IOFog.
Good point. Thanks, Chris.
Hey guys, my name is Moritz Kröger from Aachen University in Germany, and I'm currently doing research on edge computing in laser production systems.
Yeah, welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Hi, Farah Papaioannou here from Edgeworks. You want to see the demo?
I think, David, you're muted. Somehow we cannot hear you.
How about now?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I was muted by the phone. David Bericat from Red Hat. Thank you for doing that. I think I joined twice or three times. I'm the Global Technical Lead for the Internet of Things initiative here in Red Hat. I work with Jan pretty often. And obviously, Kubernetes is a big thing for Red Hat. So eager to learn and join the smart people here and at some point contribute as well. So thank you.
So just I posted the calendar link in the chat. It's also in the agenda notes. So that's the one that should give everybody up-to-date information about all the rescheduling and stuff.
Cool. Thanks, DJ.
All right, Kilton.
Okay, cool. Oh, hi, everybody. So normally when I do these demos, I can go for a long time. There's a lot to cover. So what I'm going to try to do is touch on the main points. And those main points really comprise like a set of patterns that that we've seen at the edge over the last years that that seem to hold pretty steady. So I think those will hopefully be useful to everybody. And around those patterns, I'll showcase some of the functionality. Everything out there is something that I'd like to discuss. So if there's questions about it, we'll have time for maybe a little. But for the most part, you can just ping me and we can talk deep dive about any of this stuff. That being said, so Eclipse IOFog has its goal is to be a universally applicable implementation of the concepts that that have been emerging at the edge, and carrying that forward, that means that it will be an implementation of some of the things that we discuss in this working group that we feel are applicable, useful for everybody. And the one thing that, as I've noted before, the one thing that you will not see yet is an integration with Kubernetes, and that is one of the exciting reasons why I showed up to these working group meetings and was happy to join and start working with everybody. So questions such as, well, can you do this or that with Kubernetes yet? The answer is no, and the answer is within a couple of months we'll release a version that has that first integration. So let me share my screen here, and then we'll dive in. So you'll let me know, can you see here? And you should see this iofog.org website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. There's going to be a lot of small text terminal stuff, and then I have some where I've zoomed in. So just let me know if there's anything that you guys can't see. Okay, so general concepts, and I've got a couple terminal windows up because I have a little edge compute network here running at home for the demo. The main concepts are that, like everything involving, the distributed systems edge computing, there is, on the actual edge hardware, there is an agent. And we're going to spend some time with the IOFog agent and looking what it does on the hardware and stuff. And then there is a controller that we have. And that controller is where the merge point, will be with Kubernetes, possibly even replacing the Eclipse IOFog controller with pure Kubernetes going forward, if there's a way to do that we feel really allows us to still do great stuff at the edge. So I have here a couple of Raspberry Pis that are in my edge compute network, and I've installed the agent, and of course the installation is as easy as apt-get install IOFog agent. I won't do that because then it'll upgrade because we had a release and I haven't tested it yet for this demo. But so I have some commands. In fact, let's see what version I've got here. IOFog agent version. Yeah, where I'm on 1.0.6. And so, of course, like all things coming out of Eclipse, you've got either EPL1 or EPL2. This is Eclipse IOFog is EPL2. And so if I do IOFog agent status, I can get some information about what's going on here on the hardware. And these are just your basic stats. The install is just 20 megs and runs on top of all distros of Linux. And as you can see, we're using just a little bit of CPU, and we've racked up a little bit of RAM usage. Generally, you want like 128 megs of RAM, and you want to keep aside something more than 20 megabytes of disk space because you're probably going to load microservices, and it would be a real shame to have good edge compute that can't run anything because it doesn't have the space. So I've got this on both of these, and both of them are pretty much sitting idle with no running microservices. And of course, when we started this, the only API that we felt was stable enough to program against for containerization was Docker, and so still got that in play. They've got nothing running via Docker. So what are we going to do with these things? What more can we do with these things? Well, IOFOG agent info will tell you some of the configuration that the agent has here on this particular piece of edge hardware. And there's some stuff that we pick up automatically, such as if you set it to dynamic, we'll determine what network adapter seems suitable for reaching the controller. You can change what controller you point to. And we have this, this mode on for this developer mode. With that, we bypass a lot of the security checks that you would need in order to be able to talk to a controller and be verified and so on. Verify the controller from the agent side. And that's a great way for people to get started and build stuff, and allows you to just kind of skip all of the identity certs and things like that. So you can set some limits here, RAM usage, disk usage, where you're storing logs, and where you're storing data messages if you're going to use the Eclipse IOFOG distributed data bus. And also you can do some tuning as to when this edge node actually checks in and works with the controller. And so out on these remote oil fields, you've got 2,000 pumps and you're trying to save money on your cellular cost. So you probably want your edge nodes to only be working with the controller maybe once per hour or once every 5 minutes, definitely not once every 10 seconds or once every second or whatever. So all of that stuff is tunable, and then there's low power mode and stuff like this on these edge nodes. So the real magic, let's go and have a look in the controller here. And I have a little cheat sheet that we're going to be using with large enough text so everyone can take a look at the commands. But I want to introduce some of the concepts that you can find here right in the documentation. So iofog.org, and here you should have a way of getting an environment set up on your local machine, so that way you can do the controller and the agent right from your Windows or Mac laptop. And under documentation, you should be able to find all of the stuff that we're about to look at. For controller, you've got command line and REST API, same functionality. Difference, of course, being for the REST API, you will actually need a authorization token, from a user that you create. In command line, you're root, so you can do everything without needing to pass any identity. Just tell which user's doing what. So cool. Let's go ahead and do something. And one of the first things that I want to do is take a look at what it's like to administer and look at the nodes you have on your edge compute network and stuff. And so I use this term edge compute network, and what's that all about? So one of the first patterns that kind of, for the edge is maybe a little bit different than the way we normally think about cloud and data center is, yeah, you have hardware and you have an agent on the hardware so that you have this remote administration and monitoring over it. But how do these things interconnect when they're all in these disparate networks, different physical network types, they're behind NAT layers, firewalls, and so on. And so an edge compute network is, from our point of view anyway, a software network that rides on top of all of the types of connectivity, where you're able to route the data from point to point, regardless of whether it's behind NAT layers, and this one's in a shipping center in Mexico, and then this one is down in Brazil, and we're getting data off of oil pumps there, and all of that stuff should be mixable as long as you own the edge compute network. So I have here for IOFOG controller, let's take a look at the nodes that I have. And so this will give me a list of the nodes that are in my ECN, my edge compute network at the moment. And I have a couple that were set up here for this, this Kubernetes Edge Working Group demo. And that's the two that are over here. This is, so we'll call this Kubernetes Working Group Demo 1 and Demo 2. And you can see here we've got some information that the agent daemon is running, and then we've got some information about last times we heard from it, and I can take a look at the CPU usage right now, memory usage, all remote. And so these are my two IOFOG nodes that are in my ECN for doing this demo. And there's some other basic stuff that you can take a look at here that is just kind of interesting housekeeping. If I want to allow API access to different users, I can create additional users and give them some capabilities here. So let's go ahead and look at what it's like to actually add and use microservices using this type of controller. So you have to have some storage location for containers, and we all know that private registry is typically used for deploy, and then if you're going to share stuff around, you might want to use Docker Hub or some publicly hosted registry. You can mix and match them all with IOFOG, because one of the things that we've seen is that once people develop microservices that are industry specific, really good example is like a SCADA to MQTT translator. You don't want to write it again and again. You would rather have people across that industry reuse it. And being able to reuse it means that you have some way to actually draw it down. And so you can mix and match registries. And so if we take a look here at the documentation too, we have for controller, you have registries, and then you can add, remove, and they can be private and public. And if they're private, you need to provide the credentials, and we'll allow you to draw from all across of those. And so what ends up happening is you list the microservices across various registries that you would like to be able to access and control from this control plane. And we call that the catalog. And so the microservice catalog list will give you the listing of everything that you've set up that you would like to be able to take advantage of. And so we have some that we'll be deploying here, and some simulators and some useful ones like instant REST API container and stuff. And you put these in as the administrator. If you are the admin on the controller, you're basically setting up the sanctioned list of microservices that you would like to be deployable to your ECN, from which then users can go ahead and issue these microservices against the edge nodes.
So very much a service catalog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be parallels that are where you're just like, so could we call it this? And that, yeah, absolutely, right. And so keep in mind that this has been built over the course of time from 2014 until now, with kind of the current architecture of Eclipse IOFOG arising about spring of 2016, kind of first GA. And since then, it's become apparent that some of the stuff that we did on our own early is being done better in the Kubernetes project and extensions thereof. So we're really excited about being able to shift some vocabulary and shift some of the functionality toward Kubernetes integration. So let's do something interesting rather than just have me talk, and let's go ahead and deploy something to one of these edge nodes. So as I listed the edge nodes before, which was the, oh, I'm in the wrong window. We had the, let's get the node list so I can draw from it here. I'm going to create what is called a flow, and let me talk about what a flow is, and then I'll use that to deploy microservice. There's another pattern that has emerged outside of just the concept of the edge compute network, and that pattern is one of overarching orchestration across multiple edge nodes, regardless of their location. Location being another pattern that we can talk deeply about. But so we have this concept called a flow, and that allows you to orchestrate the deployment and management and configuration of microservices across any number of nodes, as well as the data pathways allowed between them. And hopefully we'll get a chance to look at and talk about routes, but we'll see how time allows. So I'm going to take a look at the flows that I have. And a flow is nothing but like a bucket that you can use to group in a bunch of microservices and config and routes, and then turn them on or off, all in one fell swoop. And we're going to create a new one and then use that to deploy some stuff. So that would just be IOFOG controller, and then flow, and then add, name. And so let's call this, that looks good to me. And then I can set a flag for whether it's activated or deactivated by default. And I'll use the A flag to activate it by default. Oh, and my bad, I have to specify which user for audit purposes is currently doing this. That should run. There we go, great. So now if I do that, that flow list, of course, we're in and our identifier is 5, and we'll use that to deploy a microservice. So rather than have me mistype anything, I have it here in my cheat sheet. So let's see. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's take a moment to look at this real quick because, well, here, why don't I get started and then we'll do that. All right, let's go ahead. This one will be kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and deploy this one so we can look at the results here. So this, actually, you know what? Let's do it this way. Let me get my node list. And then we know it's flow 5. All right. That'll be our identifier for which edge node. And then this is my flow identifier that I reserved for this. So for which edge node, let's put it on this one here. So I've got a unique identifier for the edge node, and let's do that. Should give me a thumbs up. Nope, duplicate name because I did it just earlier today to test. Let's just call it Bluetooth API 2, and there we go. Okay, it's on its way. So I also wanted to show this. So somebody has to abstract away some of the hardware concerns, because as we've discussed in prior working group meetings, there is a diversity of hardware, and that makes some challenges. Well, so you can specify for any of the edge nodes that you create, you can specify either that's ARM or x86 or I don't know, but that's just the very beginning. So controller right now, the Eclipse IoFog controller is aware of the different hardware types, the different architectures actually, because it goes even well beyond this. And it won't be long before the listing will include iOS and Android devices, which you're not going to jailbreak these devices at commercial scale, so they need to be able to do something other than containers. So it's most likely going to be the equivalent of serverless functions. And then there's the ability to run unikernels on with Eclipse IoFog, but that would be then on devices that are listed as possibly being a different architecture. And so, but the gist of it is, you want some way of being able to list for each edge microservice, list where it's suitable to run. And for things like Lambdas, they'll be suitable to run on a larger number of devices. And for things like VMs, obviously, then you're more constrained, and that's okay. Because the edge is a very weird, nasty place where hardware looks very different across all different deploys, and you want to be able to still control it, orchestrate it, but you need to know more about it and how to set that all up. So let's have a look here. It should be, I think this unit will be the one that has, yes. So the microservice that I deployed with that flow was pushed to this node. And so we have one running, and here it is. So what I've deployed is, I've deployed a bit of hardware abstraction so that I can do some cool things on this edge node. So if you take, so another pattern that has emerged is being able to limit the amount of software that needs to be deployed to an edge compute node in order to get the base functionality versus what you actually use as you start to choose what applications to push. So in this case, I've pushed a Bluetooth low energy abstraction API. And so that means that the agent that is installed, the IoFog agent on the hardware, it comes with just what's needed to take commands from the controller and instantiate stuff dynamically. You can then instantiate the hardware abstraction that you need just the same way that you would instantiate any other edge application. If you don't need Bluetooth, don't load that container. And if you do, there you go, and then it's accessible to all the other containers. Same concept of having a database up before you allow the other microservices that tap into it. And so since this thing is here, I'm going to show a little bit about hardware abstraction. This is kind of a cool trick. So now that I have this up, I can address it, and you can either lock this down or you can keep it open like I did. It's always at 10.500 for this container unless you change it. I want to take a look at what Bluetooth Low Energy devices are available on this node. And there we go. And this is the list I had yesterday in the office was pages long. And clearly in my house, I don't have as much EMF interference in my living room. So these are the devices that I have sitting there. As you can see, it's JSON output. And I don't know if anybody's ever done, in the group has ever done Bluetooth Low Energy programming directly, but it can be kind of a pain in the butt. And it's much nicer from a Edge microservice. It's much nicer to hit a REST API and be able to use that to communicate with Bluetooth stuff. So
can I ask a quick question here? So when you do the deploy of the service, right? Where is the catalog item? Is that what includes the Docker image path and everything? Where is the link between that and the Docker image?
Yes, we've got it here. Catalog list. And this one is, let's see, I think that's the second one in my catalog here. There we go. And you have image listings for ARM and for x86. And and then you also have a registry ID. And registry 1 is Docker Hub in the default deploy of Eclipse IO Fog. Registry 0 is local cache, allowing you to just do development.
And where do you pass sort of like Docker parameters, such as like it needs to run privilege to access the hardware or port exposing or things like that?
Yep, so I did that when I deployed this one. We'll look back at the command that I issued here. That -R on the end was to give it privileged access. And you can see that in the IOFOG documentation here. Let's go down to here, microservice, and then you can see on add, I've got some of the parameters here, and you can pass ports, volume mapping. Yep.
And then a lot of those are just passed to the Docker daemon.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, we take care of passing it along, and then we make sure that it occurred. And then we have this this thing also on the IOFOG agent, which is let me take a look at info here. Isolated Docker containers mode, and with that, it's turned off at the moment. With that, we will keep a watch of what's running, and only stuff that we are aware should be running will be allowed to continue, and everything else is of course blocked or turned off. And so yeah, so we do the interfacing with the daemon, there is a lot of room here for understanding, what people want to do at the edge. We occasionally get a request to open something where someone said, I can't do what I could do with the raw container controls. Could you, any plan to open that? And of course, once we hear that there's a legit use case for it, we put it on the roadmap. And ultimately, the best is to just represent the pure capabilities of the full containering system, so that way you don't even have anything that's missing.
Yep.
Question is, does security come up, of course? So who should be authorized to do that? Because the trusted edge node should stay trusted and not become a hacking playground. But yeah. Cool. So I'm going to, just to make sure that we're tight on time here, I'm going to show the capabilities of using a flow to start up some work that I had done previously, and then see how that plays out. So let me get back my my flow list here and get my correct ID here. So I had, let's see, I think it was flow 3. I have a couple of things going. So let me turn off flow 1. Let's just do this. And flow number 5, which we just had, and let's set it down. There we go. So that'll take care of everything that was there. And then I have, under this flow, I have some additional concepts. So I have some microservices as well as some routes between them. And so let's go ahead and update that one, flow 3. And make that one active. And it'll take a moment for all of that stuff to wind through, and so we can take a moment to talk about data flows and routes. So there's a deeper dive into security that I think a lot of folks in this working group have been wanting to do, and I think it was even Nicholas from Nokia mentioned it in Seattle at the face-to-face meeting, saying, really like to expose some of the security issues at the edge and how we intend to resolve them. And then, of course, Preston, you mentioned just last meeting 2 weeks ago is, here's some things that we have yet to really kind of get some good solid answers on, but here's some starting ideas. So We have, and I'm happy to dive into it as like a separate working group, meeting discussion if anyone wants on the agenda. But we have at Edgeworth what we call the 8 requirements of secure commercial grade edge computing. And some of the concepts here are self-evident, which is like, you have to be able to know that the software hasn't been tampered with and this and that. But being able to trust the hardware and trust what software is running on what hardware is a very common pattern. I put something out at the edge, and it can be physically compromised in a way that the cloud and data center hardware typically can't. A lot of the infrastructure that we have for our cloud and data center security is fantastic, but it all rests on the premise that no one can walk up to your your rack server and plug in a USB flash drive without that person having some specialized access. Yet at the edge, the story is of course very different. You probably have hardware that is on a vehicle or at a remote site, and the whole point of doing the edge computing is that if you need to physically watch it, then you're not really getting the advantages. And so another point in the the 8 points of secure commercial grade edge computing is total control over data flow. And so we've talked about the edge compute network concept and being able to interconnect everything, but how can you be assured that the data that you'd like to move between edge locations or from edge to cloud or from cloud down to edge is truly going where it should go and was authorized properly and so on. And so to that extent, we have, if you'd like to use the API that's provided by Eclipse IOFog, you can pass your data via the distributed data bus, which uses the ECN to route everything. And that's that concept of routing that I mentioned. So let's take a look. We should now have here several microservices running related to the other flow. And on these 2 different nodes, because I started up that flow, we now have some stuff going. And we have 135 data messages have been passed from this one. And I don't know if I have set up the route to allow it into the other one. But so now let's take a look at what we have running here. So here we have a microservice that is gathering some weather data, and that's the one that's actually reporting it into the distributed data bus. And if I go and I grab the status again, we're going to see that it continues to report some data. And so then we have this other thing. It's called core networking. Going along the lines of deploying capabilities dynamically, because we essentially have the ability to move software to the edge on an ad hoc basis, why don't we also use that to deploy our networking capabilities? So when you think about it, what you want is an edge agent that is as stable as possible and allows you to deploy additional capabilities as if that were the edge applications. Well, one great edge application is the improvements to the agent itself and the agent's capabilities. And it reminds me of the old, the actual first 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System. I don't know if you guys know this, but they ever increased the capabilities by having the main board in the thing do actually very little other than the interfacing with your television screen and the controllers and so on. Most of the compute capabilities came on the cartridges. And so as that system was used over the course of a very long life for a video game system, it was amazing how new games had new capabilities. Well, why not do the same thing with the edge? If it's really expensive to deploy hardware, because think about not only the management, but the actual rollout costs, right? If you've got 200 vehicles that you're outfitting with edge compute, if you have to bring them back in to make improvements, that's going to cost you a lot of money. So how about keeping the agent as simple as possible and then using the agent's capabilities to dynamically deploy things like internetworking or hardware abstraction?
Be a cool demo to do that with software-defined radio hardware.
Yes, it would.
Right. So now you have your base platform and you basically ship a new radio type via Docker container. Exactly.
That's exactly the idea. And so then when someone says, do we do LTM or NB-IoT or is it LoRaWAN? And you should say, I don't care. I just literally don't care anymore because edge computing is not about a particular rollout. Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that's coming, I think, in that same space is FPGA, where some colleagues work on that, where you can basically say, hey, which hardware interfaces do you have? How many SPI, how many this? Well, it doesn't matter what the hardware platform shipped with. If you have FPGA, you just can software define new hardware interfaces, basically.
Yes, that's it. You've got it spot on. And so, you know, you can run Eclipse IO Fog like right out the box on like, I'm showing a Raspberry Pi, but you can also run it on like an NVIDIA Jetson. And real popular is the Jetson TX2 for doing like edge image recognition and, you know, NLP stuff. And when you do it, you just have to have some exposure to the onboard resources, and it doesn't even really matter what it ends up being. Exactly. So now we get to like kind of that universal concept, and then you can allow people to say, well, look, you've got the infrastructure out there. Just get that vendor's microservice for interfacing, or flash that FPGA. That's perfect.
I'm sure you have more demo, because I'm always voracious with Q&A too. I had two quick questions. One is, how do you do service discovery on a node when you have multiple microservices? Mm-hmm. And then the other is, I'm guessing the answer may be because you just kind of went in at the beginning of this project to kind of solve the problem. But I looked at the core networking stuff, and it seems like you've kind of reinvented a few things where you're basically doing raw sockets, and you invented your own binary serialization protocol, and everything seems very sort of bespoke. Is that just because you guys went in to sort of say, hey, we need data going from A to B? Let's just start from basic Linux principles and code and.
That's right.
Okay.
And
so it could be gRPC, it could be Thrift or anything else, but you just kind of just solved the problem at hand at the beginning, and it's stuck.
Exactly. And then it stuck, and then people started using it. And then since we can swap it out, we're actually not really worried about the ability to roll forward. So one of our goals, you know, from here on out is to continually evaluate whether there is a standard or a set of standards that we could allow people to exchange for any of the stuff that we've done as a first pass. And and these are some of the discussions actually I'm really excited to have with you, Preston. Is like there are things out there that we may not even be aware of that are a direct fit for what it is that our users are doing with this. And we're happy to list several of the core networking microservices for different implementations, also allowing people to take better advantage of software-defined networking and all of the things that might be important to their deploy. So. I think the phrase that I used when I first jumped in to meet you guys and start talking about stuff was that it's time for Eclipse IO Fog to kind of like grow up into a bigger community. And part of that is asking, like, is there something here that we could be leveraging that other people already have in place? On that note of service discovery, and I think we'll leave the last 10 minutes here for the group. On that note of service discovery, we actually only do hardware capability discovery at this time, and we don't expose running services to the control plane for you to leverage in orchestration. And that's kind of a first order of business to do a Kubernetes integration. Is we know how important that is. And so if I'm running a microservice on an edge node that's valuable for others, we need to be able to surface that so that becomes exposed as an available service. For hardware, we do a fairly good job. We'll tell you this: hey, we have some USB to serial adapters available and stuff, and then you can, this one's got Bluetooth and that type of stuff. But so always a lot of work to do. And we are at the Eclipse Foundation. We are actually now expanding the pool of folks and welcoming in people to drive this implementation forward. So that type of input is invaluable to us, and I really appreciate it. Cool. So I think to wrap this up, I deployed that flow, or I activated that flow, and we've got 2 over here and 3 over here. And one of the things that you get with the core networking stuff that we've got in place is you can also expose the data pathways into any of the edge nodes, allowing you to retain data at the edge but still access it remotely. So it's one of the problems we've talked about at the edge is you want to curtail your usage of bandwidth. You don't want to transmit raw data if really what you want is the insights and the outputs. Well, what if you want that raw data to be part of model training or something, and maybe you want to access it? And so I have a setting here on this one, and this is a demo, so there's a 50-50 chance here that I did something I'm not going to fire up.
Do we have time for more questions?
Yeah, I think we do. So yeah, let me leave the time for questions here. And so the example of that, what I'm describing is that here, I see that I have no data, but I have an open pathway to talk to that edge node, even though it's in my home behind NAT layers. So the concept of being able to keep data at the edge and still use it is also really important, because if it's essentially locked at the edge, and then you might as well move the raw data in one form or another, and this allows you to just go access it when you need. So cool. Let's stop it there and leave 8 minutes for questions. And also, I'm not sure if administratively I've taken over time that you guys needed, Preston and Dion.
No, it's all good. Thanks for the presentation.
Sure. And this is about like 5% of what I'd like to show you guys. I can talk for hours about this stuff, but so just ping me if anybody wants to like dive in. And don't feel bad about pointing out something too where you're like, the way you did that is actually really not compliant with what we all want. It's like, please bring it on, because we need to plan our roadmap, and you guys are actually helping us make this thing better.
Hey, Kilton, I pasted a question into the private chat. I didn't want to
read the chat now, and I'm gonna have a look here. Okay, cool. Let's see. And so that was Matt. That was you that was just speaking. Okay, great. I see yours. I think the first question. Let's see. Do you contemplate IOFOG running only on the device edge, the device side of the last mile, or do you see use cases where it might also run on the infrastructure edge, data center, base of the cell tower? Awesome question. We actually want to be agnostic as to what location, but obviously what you would choose to run at the base of the cell tower, which we have a customer, by the way, that is in just a couple months, you'll see an announcement from them about the embedding of IOFOG in their LTE base station product. So we shouldn't care where we run, and you can even run IOFOG like inside the cloud and data center environments. Question is, what would you be doing with it there when you have these other capabilities? So you'll want to change what it is you would want to run in different locations, because obviously the capabilities are different, the network configuration is different, latencies are different, but we want you to be able to see the edge and the cloud as a pure continuum, and our goal is, how about having Kubernetes able to orchestrate cloud all the way down to the device edge and every point in between. And obviously, Matt, we have a lot to talk about with this. Maybe even some deploys coming up that we could check out with that type of configuration.
Yeah, thanks for that answer.
Yeah, very cool. Let's see, and so then, okay, and then we had from Tom saying he had to drop. That would appreciate the link, and I don't see any other questions in here, so I guess the floor is open. Cindy, did you have one, or you just wanted to make sure we have?
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Great to see the demos. It's really nice. I think a lot of the concepts are similar to the Kubernetes. One question I have is for the controller. Do you have the scheduling functionalities? Because when I see your deployment, you're doing targeted, right?
That's right. It's all targeted. This is why the merge. This is why the integration of Kubernetes.
Okay, cool.
We have no interest in replicating all the great work. And when we started doing this, Kubernetes was either not in existence or was very, very nascent stage. Sure. So yeah, so our whole goal is all of that capability should be actually driving the engine at IOFOG instead of IOFOG having its own layers.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Then the other question, I'm curious, like you mentioned the edge node can be behind the NAT or firewall. So how did you like SSH to your Raspberry Pi?
Well, for those ones, they're on the LAN with me.
Yes.
But since you mention it, there is SSH tunneling provided with Eclipse IOFOG, and all you have to do is use a control plane to tell the agent to punch out and rendezvous at a point for you to get an SSH tunnel. The goal is, if you put something out at the edge, you should be able to reach it. If you are the administrator of that node, you should be able to reach it no matter what. If you aren't the administrator of that node, you should have a hell of a time trying to get anything off of it or any information.
So the thing is, let's drill down a little bit more on this, because oftentimes you have tons of devices, right? Then they are geolocated at different locations. So then I would assume it won't be scale if like you have to manage one by one, right? Or I misunderstand.
Yep. Yet another reason for Kubernetes integration is because if you can't treat groups of things, all with the same policy, the same settings, then you have scale problems. And people have often asked, so there's Eclipse IOFog and there's Edgeworks, and what on earth does Edgeworks do? Well, so as you can see, you can program the Eclipse IOFog controller, and as it merges with Kubernetes, you'll be able to use all of the same techniques you use for Kubernetes to drive the edge. But still, on top of that, you will probably have questions about what's the best way to actually manage a fleet of 10,000 vehicles, for example, or 400 oil pumps. And commercially, Edgeworks is producing great SaaS software that you run in the cloud and you use to drive your edge, and it'll allow you to merge in your cloud. So that's the stuff that is enterprise use cases are. Go ahead and write an engine on with the UI and management system. That's one of the products that we're launching that is a commercial product. But the whole goal of the Eclipse IOFog engine, especially merging with Kubernetes, is you can programmatically do stuff at scale, but you are going to have to be the one scripting. And we all know that anyway about the cloud infrastructure is, everyone has their own way of controlling it, and that fits to the use case. There's no universal UI for all of it. That's why we see stuff like Rancher is great to get started with, and we want that equivalent type of stuff to start growing around Eclipse IOFog. Especially, we want it to be growing around Kubernetes and then able to drive Eclipse IOFog.
Okay, cool. I think I would assume you're gonna integrate with Kubernetes for the multi-tenancy, and the other one is your edge node gonna report the status to the central controller?
Yes. So you want to just help, Cindy?
No, we have the capability already.
Yep. So we're going to be releasing first Kubernetes integration of IOFog in just a couple of months, and we're going to be talking to you and Annie at Huawei about this.
Yes.
Anyway, about having some deeper work with you guys. So the answer to that is yes, and. Essentially, you have to, for Kubernetes to get a good grip on the edge, you have to, properly expand the definition of the edge resources so that some of the unique things about the edge start to get exposed, and then you can treat them as attributes that are part of the mix. And that's all stuff that we're figuring out the right way to do. And I think, Preston, one of the first things that I asked you there in Seattle was, architecturally, like, what's the right way to be extending Kubernetes? There are wrong ways to do everything. We want to make sure we do it right so that people feel it's suitable for a go-forward rollout.
Right. And there's the unknown, right? I mean, I think the part of this group is the right and wrong is not, it's not a done deal.
Yeah, I agree, because different people have different needs, right? I don't
when you have your fleet, right? You have the registry of nodes. How do you approach integrations? I think that's one of the things in IoT in general is that it's unavoidable to end up with redundant registries because different facets of the features and capabilities at a minimum just need a list of what are my devices, right? Have you done like one-to-one mapping integrations where for every node there's a kind of a mirroring into another asset or device inventory system?
Yeah, so it's, we hear it referred to as things like failover or, hot swap replacement and stuff, and everyone's got a different driver for it.
Well, but I mean, more like, let's say you've got all of your edge nodes have a SIM card, right? And so now, and you're partnering with like Verizon or AT&T, they have their own, device inventory registry dashboard for each of those SIM cards.
Oh, I see.
And they're essentially a one-to-one, right? So there's for every one IOFog, there's a representation of that same node in another system.
Yep, I gotcha.
How do you smooth over the fact that there's going to be unavoidable duplication about certain metadata and about some other sort of stuff about these nodes?
Yep, now I totally understand. The first version of this that we've dealt with is you have a deployed list of MAC addresses for devices that are out there that have radios and are going to be talking to each other. And those are the primary identifiers normally used in an advanced manufacturing deploy to say, these things on the warehouse shelves are, this one is in A7 and this one is in B42. And how do we know which one goes where? So exposing those unique identifiers so that they can be routed, right? And you can go grab the match is the first order of business. But all of that was done with a microservice on an IOFog node that was specially written to do that translation. And this is a problem that's going to grow and get worse. How do you ship hardware that has unique identifiers in it? SIM card's a great example, and be able to know, oh, it's gone live, and now I need to allow it into the system. And shipping out hardware at scale that's ready for edge computing, where you basically just power it on and go, is we're just about to send out some cameras that have GPUs in them, where the identifier is flashed in the same way that you flash in a serial number into a Windows when Dell rolls out some computers and so on. This process obviously needs to get faster and more automated, and possibly even allowing you to take like kind of unidentified hardware and give it some sort of identity. Once you expose its underlying SIM card and so on. All good stuff. Some of it right now has been handled with microservices written for the application, the specific use case. And I think some capabilities in the engine itself are probably warranted. Maybe the abstract notion of unique identifiers that are one-to-one mapped. And then what's the external tie, right? And how do you reach out? How do you bring it back? Do you cache it? If you don't, all of this type of stuff. Yeah.
Yep. I got to drop. I'm back to back at the top of the hour here, but thank you very much, Kilton, and hopefully others will not have to leave as abruptly as I'm about to. But
cool.
Thank you.
I can still be here. Yeah, nice demo. Yeah.
Thanks. Cool. Well, I can hang for a few more minutes and take additional questions if anybody has more. And again, I'm available for follow up too, so you can just ping me. Yeah, David, did you?
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple questions, but I mean, I don't know if you have time. You said that when you deploy IOFOG, basically you have a dependency on the operating system, right? So you need an OS already existing in whatever edge box that you're deploying your software that has access at least to install the agent, right? Mm-hmm. So iOS doesn't really help you managing the life cycle of the OS, I guess is the question, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is true.
Cool.
So the first thing that we did with Eclipse IOFOG was ask ourselves, if we're going to do this and get 80% spread of where people need to do edge computing right now, what should we target? And the answer to that question was major distros of Linux, using containers, and have it run on devices that have the capability to
sure.
run the host OS right out the box. Now,
sure.
Ever increasing, we're being asked, well, if you're there and you do deal with the life cycle of the edge agent, because Eclipse IOFOG will let you roll forward
sure.
the agent remotely and roll it back, what about helping with the host OS? And we can tie into TPM and secure boot and all of this stuff to help with, these are edge security policies. Cool stuff, but what about being able to do maintenance of these remote nodes? And you don't want to end up with Wind River and Eclipse IOFOG and then saying, well, the two of them together give me what I want. You really just want one. I would love to talk about how we can better integrate with the host OS and provide those capabilities, given that we have this trusted channel between the edge now and the control plane.
Sure. Yeah. That was yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And the other question is, sometimes when we talk to particularly industrial, big factory secure kind of bunkers, they're pretty strict about the policy of some external service reaching out to things that are deployed in the factory. So that is absolutely forbidden. Nobody can open anything. Even VPN is kind of tricky.
Yep.
And you said that you have the ability to open SSH, and that's a requirement. Does your agent have the possibility to open the connection itself from the inside to the outside? So you establish the secure communication, and then at that point, it's sort of trusted based on search or what have you. And at that point, you already have the channel to start following whatever changes you need to do.
Yes, that's exactly the idea. And then in addition, let's also note that if the deploy mandates that you keep information and control all within a certain building, you just go ahead and put everything on the LAN, and you can drive it all from within the factory. But if you need outside remote control, then yes, you want the agent to be talking to the control plane with a trusted connection. And then from that, then you can begin to actually move data or do administration by opening an SSH tunnel and so on. In some of our customer use cases, they also talk about boundaries for data flow. It's okay with some of our customers, which, manufacturers in Germany come up a lot on this topic. They want to give the ability for the vendor to, with the IoT solution, to deploy updates to the software and go in and be the administrator of this solution that they've purchased, but they don't want any of their actual data to leave the building. And so one of the UI for this is coming with our upcoming EdgeWorks commercial edge management UI product, but the programmatic capability is already there in the Eclipse IOFog engine to use the geographic location to specify the boundaries of data. And that, of course, means that the microservices need to be using the Eclipse IOFog, data controls there. But we can also watchdog whether anything outside of that data bus is being used to transmit. We watchdog the network and so on. So you get some really decent guarantees and some auditability around where data has been allowed to flow geographically and has never flowed outside of those boundaries. And, or you can even set policies like no data is allowed to enter this geofence. And that would be ways that you can give some customer assurance that the infrastructure is indeed acknowledging the location awareness, challenges of the edge.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for the answers.
Yeah, sure.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I have one question. So you're basically hiding away devices on your edge device. Are there plans to introduce something similar for inter-process communication?
So yeah, there's, let me make sure that I understand exactly what you want from inter-process communication, but you can pass information as kind of officially sanctioned data between the microservices right there, and we use a shared memory space for moving that between the microservices. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're thinking?
Yes, exactly.
Great. That does not need, in that case, the edge compute network, instead of being like, across nodes, which is like, you could think of that as like micro VPNs. In this case, shared memory space is really, really fast, and it's right there between edge microservices on the same hardware. We determine whether that hardware is separate or the same, and you don't have to do anything with the IOFog controller. You just say, I want to route the data between, and we determine if it can be done with shared memory, if it has to be done via these networking agents.
Oh, that sounds great. What are the latencies on that?
So we did a tracking. We were doing 1 million data messages per second. I think of maybe it was 1K per message, and latencies were sub 20 microseconds from microservice to microservice. Good, but that hardware I think also was like an Intel Atom and maybe 1 gig of RAM. So further tests needed. You're welcome to try to crack it and see what you get and report back your speed tests.
I will try that. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, I think we're 10 after, and I think for folks watching the recording, I don't want to be one of those people that just hangs on. You can ping me with any questions. Get me I'm on the Slack for this working group. You can email me, in fact, I'll put my email in the meeting notes next to my name on the attendee list, so it makes it easy for everybody. Happy to talk more. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff for days, weeks. Thanks everybody for letting me showcase this stuff. It's been really cool, and the questions have been just spot on, better than any other working group that that I see for the Edge. So, you guys are the best.
Thank you, Hilton.
Great. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
Take care, folks.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
See you.
Goodbye.
Bye.